The red sand of Xerion 7 shifted under Kithra's boots as she stumbled backward. Blood trickled down her arm where a Vrathul claw had found its mark. Around her, 8 of the galaxy's most feared hunters formed a slowly tightening circle. Their chittering filled the air like broken glass scraping against metal. The crystal spear in her hands felt heavier than it should. Passed down through 7 generations of Zalani warriors, it had never failed her family. The weapon hummed with stored energy, its blue light casting strange shadows on the alien rocks scattered across this dead moon. The largest Vrathul stepped forward. Its armor plates gleamed black in the harsh sunlight. This was their chieftain, standing nearly 3 meters tall. 4 arms ended in razor-sharp claws that could tear through starship hulls, its compound eyes fixed on her with predatory intelligence. Kithara raised her spear and charged. The weapon's point struck true, hitting the chieftain's chest plate with tremendous force. But instead of piercing through as it always had, the crystal blade shattered like ice against stone. Fragments of her family's legacy scattered across the red sand. The chieftain's chittering turned to what she could only describe as laughter. Its forearms spread wide in a gesture of mock celebration. The other hunters began clicking their mandibles together in rhythm, creating an awful music that echoed off the canyon walls. She dropped the broken handle and drew her plasma knife. The small blade would barely scratch their armor, but Zalani warriors did not surrender. Her people had fought these creatures for 300 years. They knew what capture meant. Death was preferable. The circle grew smaller. She could smell their musk now, sharp and metallic. One of them spoke in their clicking language. She did not understand the words, but the tone was clear. They were discussing how to take her alive. Kithra thought of her sister back on the homeworld. She thought of the message she would never send, the mission she would never complete. Intelligence about Vrathul movements that would die with her on this forgotten moon. The chieftain took another step forward. Its claws gleamed in the light. Behind it, the others began to move in perfect coordination. This was how they hunted. Slow, patient, savoring the fear of their prey. She raised her knife and prepared for her final charge. Her ancestors would sing of this moment if any lived to remember her name. A Zalani warrior facing impossible odds with only a blade and her courage. The chieftain's front claws rose to strike. Its eyes reflected her image 8 times over. She could see herself as the creature saw her. Small, broken, defeated, but she was Zalani. And Zalani did not die quietly. She screamed her family's war cry and lunged forward with the plasma knife. The blade found a gap in the chieftain's armor, drawing purple blood. The creature roared and swiped at her with 2 claws. She ducked under the first, but the second caught her shoulder, spinning her around. Pain shot through her body as she hit the ground. The knife flew from her hand and clattered against a rock. She tried to stand, but her left arm would not respond. Warm liquid ran down her back. The hunters closed in. She could see their feet now, each step sending small avalanches of sand toward her. Their chittering grew louder, more excited. They knew the hunt was over. Kithara rolled onto her back and stared up at the pale sky of Xerion 7. 2 small moons hung like distant eyes in the purple atmosphere. She had always wondered what this place looked like from orbit. Now she would never know. The chieftain loomed over her, blocking out the light. Its mandibles spread wide, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. It spoke again in its clicking language. This time she caught one word she recognized. A Zalani word they had learned from previous captives. Sister. They knew about her sister. Somehow they knew about the mission. About the intelligence she carried. This was not a random encounter. They had been waiting for her. Fear turned to anger in her chest. These creatures had killed her squad, destroyed her weapon, and now they threatened her family. She tried to spit at the chieftain, but her mouth was too dry. The chieftain reached down with 1 claw. She closed her eyes and waited for the end. At least she had tried. At least she had fought. Her ancestors would understand. But instead of pain, she heard a sound like thunder. The ground shook beneath her. The chieftain's chittering turned to a roar of surprise and anger. She opened her eyes to see something impossible streaking across the sky. A trail of fire and smoke growing larger by the second. The object was coming down fast. Too fast for any controlled landing. The Vrathul scattered as the thing crashed into the center of their circle. Sand and rocks exploded outward in a massive cloud. The impact threw her several meters, but also knocked the chieftain backward. When the dust settled, she saw a metal pod buried halfway in the sand. Steam rose from its surface. Strange markings covered its hull. Not Zalani, not Vrathul, something else entirely. The pod's door blew off with a loud bang. More steam poured out. A figure emerged from the white cloud, moving slowly but steadily. At first she thought it might be another Zalani. The general shape was similar. 2 arms, 2 legs, standing upright. But as the steam cleared, she saw differences. This being was shorter than a Zalani with strange coloring. Its skin was pale brown instead of blue-gray. Hair covered the top of its head, and its clothing was unlike anything she had seen. The creature carried what looked like weapons, though they were primitive compared to plasma rifles. Some kind of kinetic projectile system, if she had to guess. The being also appeared to be injured. Dark liquid stained its clothing in several places. The Vrathul chieftain had recovered from the surprise. It roared challenges at this new arrival, demanding answers in its clicking language. The other hunters began to spread out again, surrounding both her and the newcomer. The strange being looked around at the circle of hunters. It seemed to take in the situation quickly. The broken spear, her injuries, the predatory stance of the Vrathul. Its head turned toward her and she saw its eyes. They were not the compound eyes of an insect or the large orbs of her own people. They were small and dark, but somehow she could read the intelligence behind them. This creature understood what was happening. It spoke then in a voice that was surprisingly calm given the circumstances. The words were in no language she recognized, but the tone was unmistakable. It was asking a question. The being gestured at the hunters with one of its weapons. Then it looked back at her. This time she thought she caught the meaning, even though she did not understand the words. It was asking if it could join the fight. Marcus Chen wiped blood from his forehead and tried to make sense of what he was seeing. His drop pod's navigation system had failed during atmospheric entry, sending him wildly off course from his intended landing zone. The emergency crash landing had left him with a concussion, 3 cracked ribs, and a deep cut on his left arm. But his injuries were minor compared to what he had stumbled into. 8 massive creatures surrounded a fallen figure. The beings looked like someone had crossed a spider with a tank and taught it to walk upright. Their black armor reflected the dim light of this strange world's suns. The figure on the ground was clearly injured. Blue-gray skin marked it as non-human, but its basic shape was familiar enough. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head where a head should be. Whatever species it belonged to, it was in trouble. Marcus had been a Marine for 8 years. He had seen plenty of situations where someone was outnumbered and outgunned. The universal body language was the same across species. This was a predator-prey scenario, and the prey was about to lose. The largest of the spider things turned toward him when he emerged from the pod. It made sounds like metal scraping against bone. Probably some kind of communication, though Marcus had no idea what it was saying. The tone suggested it was not happy about his interruption. He checked his weapons quickly. The M4 carbine had survived the crash, though the scope was cracked. 3 magazines of ammunition. His sidearm was intact with 2 extra clips, a few grenades on his vest. Not much against 8 armored opponents, but he had worked with less. Marcus looked at the injured figure again. It was trying to sit up, which showed impressive determination given the circumstances. Its eyes met his across the battlefield. There was intelligence there, desperation, but also a kind of stubborn courage that he recognized. The spider creatures were positioning themselves to surround him as well. They moved with practiced coordination, like a pack that had hunted together many times. Their claws made scratching sounds against the rocky ground. Back home on Earth, Marcus would have called for backup. Air support, artillery, something with more firepower than a few small arms. But Earth was light years away, and he was alone on a moon whose name he did not even know. He raised his rifle and gestured toward the creatures. Then he looked back at the fallen warrior. The being seemed to understand that he was offering to help, even though they shared no common language. Marcus had been taught that humans were considered a minor species by galactic standards. Weak, primitive, not worth the attention of the major powers. His mission had been simple reconnaissance, staying hidden and gathering information about alien movements in this sector. But plans change. And sometimes you have to choose between following orders and doing what is right. Marcus had made that choice before, and he was making it again now. He spoke in English, knowing the words would mean nothing to anyone here. But the tone would be clear enough. He was asking permission to enter the fight. It seemed like the polite thing to do. The largest spider creature roared at him and charged. 4 claws extended like spears, moving faster than something that size should have been able to move. Its armor gleamed with what looked like energy fields. Advanced technology built into a living weapon. Marcus sidestepped the charge and put 3 rounds center mass. The bullet struck the creature's chest and bounced off harmlessly. The armor was definitely energy shielded. Kinetic weapons were not going to penetrate it with direct hits. But Marcus had not been aiming for penetration. He had been testing response time and shield coverage. The creature's reaction told him everything he needed to know about its reflexes. The way the energy field flickered showed him the shield generators were probably located at the joints. He rolled to the left as another creature swiped at him with razor-sharp claws. The attack passed through the space where he had been standing. These things were fast, but they were used to prey that fought back with energy weapons or tooth and claw. They were not expecting human tactics. Marcus came up firing, putting rounds into the joint where the creature's upper left arm connected to its torso. The shield flickered and failed. His next 3 shots punched through armor plating and drew purple blood. The wounded creature stumbled backward, chittering in what sounded like pain and surprise. The others turned their attention fully toward him. Good. That meant they were not focused on the injured warrior anymore. 2 of them rushed him at once, trying to pin him between their attacks. Marcus dropped to one knee and put burst fire into the legs of the one on his right. When it stumbled, he used its body as cover while engaging the second attacker. His movements were not flashy or dramatic. 8 years of military training had taught him that combat was about efficiency, not style. Identify weakness. Exploit it. Move to the next target. Stay alive long enough to complete the mission. The creatures were strong and fast, but they fought like apex predators. They were used to being the biggest threat on the battlefield. They had never faced an opponent that treated them as just another tactical problem to solve. Marcus pulled a grenade from his vest and tossed it toward a cluster of 3 creatures. They scattered, which was exactly what he wanted. Divide and conquer, turn a group fight into several smaller engagements. The explosion sent shrapnel flying across the battlefield. Some of it struck the creature's armor, causing their shields to flare and drain power. Marcus had learned something else useful. The energy fields could be overloaded with enough simultaneous impacts. He switched to full automatic and sprayed rounds at one creature's torso. The rapid impacts overwhelmed its shield system. When the field collapsed, he put a controlled burst into what he hoped were vital organs. The creature dropped with a wet thud. Purple blood pooled beneath it. The others seemed shocked. These beings were clearly not used to losing pack members in combat. They had expected this to be a simple hunt, not a real fight. Marcus reloaded and checked his ammunition. 1 magazine left after this one. He would have to make every shot count. The creatures were learning to adapt to his tactics, spreading out more and approaching from different angles. But he was learning too. Their armor was strongest in front and weakest at the joints. Their shields recharged quickly but could be overloaded. They communicated through those chittering sounds, which meant he could potentially predict their coordinated attacks. The largest creature, the one that had been about to finish off the injured warrior, roared something that sounded like orders. The remaining pack members began to move in a complex pattern, clearly executing some kind of hunting strategy. Marcus smiled grimly. He had been in worse situations. Afghanistan had taught him how to fight multiple opponents in rough terrain. Syria had shown him how to use an enemy's overconfidence against them, and years of training had drilled the basics into his bones. Move, shoot, communicate, cover. The fundamentals worked the same way whether you were fighting human insurgents or alien predators. The technology might be different, but warfare itself was a constant. He glanced toward the fallen warrior. The being had managed to sit up and was watching the battle with obvious amazement. Good. That meant it was still conscious and aware. If they both survived this, he might need its help to get off this moon. The creatures finished their positioning and attacked as one. Marcus had been expecting it. He dove behind a large rock and let them converge on his last known position. When they reached the spot where he had been standing, he came up firing from their flank. 2 more went down before they could react. The survivors turned toward him, but he was already moving again. Stay mobile. Never let them pin you down. Always be where they do not expect you to be. The pack leader seemed to realize that this was not going according to plan. It made different sounds now, higher pitched and more urgent. Fear, Marcus thought. These creatures were learning what it felt like to be the prey. Kithara watched in stunned disbelief as the strange being systematically dismantled the Vrathul hunting pack. This was not how combat was supposed to work. The creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries were being outfought by a single warrior using primitive weapons. The human moved like water flowing around rocks. Every step seemed calculated. When the Vrathul attacked, it was not there. When they regrouped, it struck from an unexpected angle. It fought as if it could see several seconds into the future. But it was the casual nature of the commentary that truly shocked her. The being kept speaking in its strange language, and even though she could not understand the words, the tone was conversational, almost relaxed. Like this was just another day at work. Marcus switched to his sidearm as his rifle ran dry. 4 creatures remained, including the pack leader. They had spread out in a wide circle, trying to use their numbers advantage. Standard predator tactics. Surround the prey and attack from multiple directions. He pulled his last grenade and tossed it high into the air. The Vrathul looked up, tracking its arc. While they were distracted, Marcus sprinted toward the nearest rock formation. When the grenade exploded harmlessly in the air, they realized they had been tricked. But Marcus was already in position behind cover. He picked up a chunk of loose rock and threw it to his left. The sound drew 2 of the creatures in that direction. Basic misdirection. Make them think you are where you are not. When they moved to investigate, he came around the right side of his cover and put 3 rounds into the closest creature's back. Its shield was designed to protect against frontal attacks. From behind, the energy field was much weaker. The wounded Vrathul spun around, claws extended, but Marcus was already rolling under its swing. He came up inside its reach and emptied his remaining rounds into the soft tissue under its chin. Purple blood sprayed across the rocks, 3 left. Marcus drew his combat knife and picked up a piece of the broken crystal spear. The blade was still sharp, even shattered. Waste not, want not. Use every advantage available. The pack leader chittered orders to its remaining subordinates. They began to advance more cautiously now. The easy confidence was gone. They had seen too many of their pack die to maintain their predator arrogance. Marcus smiled and spoke again in his strange language. Kithara caught the tone. He was telling them something. Offering advice, perhaps, or maybe just making conversation. The audacity of it was breathtaking. One of the remaining Vrathul lost patience and charged. Marcus sidestepped and slashed with the crystal fragment. The blade cut through the creature's shields like they were not there. It stumbled past him, dark fluid leaking from a gash across its torso. Kithara blinked in surprise. The crystal spear fragments retained their energy-cutting properties. The human had somehow realized this just by examining the broken weapon. It was adapting faster than should have been possible. The wounded creature tried to turn around for another attack, but Marcus was already behind it. His knife found the gap between armor plates at the base of its skull. It dropped without a sound, 2 left. The pack leader and 1 subordinate. They had stopped advancing and were making different sounds now. Not the confident chittering of hunters, but something higher pitched. They were calling for help. Marcus tilted his head, listening. After a moment, he nodded as if he understood something. Then he did something that made no tactical sense. He stepped into the open and began walking directly toward the 2 survivors. The pack leader roared and charged, all 4 claws extended. This was what it had been waiting for. A chance to use its size and strength advantage. No cover to hide behind. No tricks or misdirection. Just straightforward combat. Marcus waited until the last possible second, then dropped to 1 knee and lunged upward with the crystal fragment. The shard punched through the creature's chest armor and into what Kithara hoped were vital organs. The pack leader's momentum carried it forward, driving the improvised weapon deeper. The massive creature collapsed on top of him, pinning him to the ground. Purple blood pooled around them both. For a moment, Kithara thought the human had been crushed. Then she heard him speaking again, his voice muffled but still conversational. He pushed the dead weight off himself and stood up, brushing dust from his strange clothing. The last Vrathul backed away, chittering in what was clearly panic. Its pack was dead. Its leader was dead. And this small creature with primitive weapons was still standing. Marcus looked at the surviving creature and spoke again. This time his tone was different, firmer. He was giving it options, Kithara realized. Leave now or join its pack in death. The universal language of victorious warriors. The last Vrathul needed no translation. It turned and ran, its four legs carrying it quickly across the broken terrain. Within moments it was gone, leaving only dust clouds to mark its retreat. Silence fell over the battlefield. Marcus stood among the bodies of 7 Vrathul hunters, bloodied but victorious. He looked down at his weapons with mild annoyance, as if disappointed that they had performed so poorly against advanced alien armor. Then he walked over to where Kythera lay and knelt beside her. Up close she could see his face clearly. The features were similar to Zelani in basic structure, but different in detail. Smaller eyes, hair instead of cranial ridges, skin that showed injury more easily. He spoke to her in his own language, then switched to broken but recognizable Galactic Standard. His accent was strange, but she could understand the words. He was asking about her injuries, offering medical assistance. Kythera tried to sit up and managed it on the second attempt. Her shoulder was badly damaged, but nothing seemed to be broken. The human reached into a pouch on his equipment belt and pulled out what looked like medical supplies. As he began treating her wounds with surprising skill, she found her voice. Her first question came out in a whisper, spoken in Galactic Standard so he might understand. "What are you?" He looked up from his work and smiled. It was an expression she had never seen before, but somehow she understood it. Reassurance mixed with something that might have been amusement. "Human," he said in accented Galactic Standard. "From Earth. And you are very welcome, human." The name meant nothing to her. She had never heard of this species or their homeworld. According to everything she knew about galactic politics, there was no spacefaring race that matched this being's description. Yet here he was. A warrior who had just defeated 7 Vrathul hunters using weapons that should have been useless against their armor. A being who fought with tactical brilliance that surpassed anything in Zelani military doctrine. As he finished bandaging her wounds, she realized that everything she thought she knew about the galaxy might be wrong. If humans existed, if they could fight like this, then what else was hidden in the vast spaces between stars? Marcus helped her to her feet and looked around at the scattered bodies. He said something in his own language, then translated, "We should probably get out of here before their friends show up." Friends, as if he expected there to be more Vrathul coming, as if this entire engagement had been just the opening move in a larger conflict. Kythera looked at this strange human warrior and wondered what else he knew that she did not. As they moved across the rocky terrain, Kythera found herself studying the human with new eyes. Marcus carried his primitive weapons with easy familiarity, but there were other details that did not fit the image of a minor species. His equipment was clearly advanced, just disguised to look simple. The communication device on his wrist was clearly quantum encrypted. The medical supplies he had used on her wounds were more effective than anything in the Zelani military. Even his clothing, which appeared to be basic fabric, seemed to regulate temperature and resist damage. She decided to test a theory. Speaking in Galactic Standard, she asked him about his homeworld. Marcus glanced at her with those strange dark eyes and smiled again. That same expression of amusement mixed with something else, something that looked like pride. "Earth is in the Sol system," he said, "third planet from the star, about 26,000 light-years from galactic center. We have been watching the galaxy for quite some time now. Watching, not exploring, not trading. Watching." Kythera felt a chill that had nothing to do with the thin atmosphere of Xerion 7. How long had humans been observing galactic civilization without revealing themselves? She asked him about his weapons. Why use kinetic projectiles when energy weapons were clearly superior? Marcus laughed, a sound she was beginning to recognize as distinctly human. The translation that followed made her question everything she thought she knew about military technology. "Energy weapons are predictable," he explained as they walked. "They rely on power sources that can be disrupted. Shields are designed to deflect them, but a chunk of metal moving at high velocity? That is just physics. Hard to argue with physics." As if to prove his point, he stopped and picked up one of the spent shell casings from his rifle. The metal was scarred and deformed from the explosive force that had sent the bullet flying. He held it up for her to examine. "Simple technology," he said. "Reliable, easy to manufacture. Hard to defend against if you have never encountered it before. Most species in the galaxy stopped using kinetic weapons thousands of years ago. They forgot how effective they could be. Kithra thought about the Vrathul hunters lying dead behind them. Their shields had been designed to stop plasma bolts and energy beams. They had never encountered weapons that simply punched through matter with brute force. It was like bringing ancient siege engines to attack a fortress designed to resist modern artillery. But it was more than just weapons technology. The way Marcus fought showed an understanding of warfare that went beyond anything she had learned in Zelani military academies. His tactics were sophisticated, adaptive, and apparently instinctive. She asked him about his military training. How long had he studied combat? What academies had he attended? Marcus gave her another of those amused smiles and gestured to himself with one hand. 8 years in the Marines, he said. Before that, basic education like every human child receives. We learn about warfare because we have to. Our species has been fighting for survival since we first picked up rocks and threw them at predators. Every human child. Kithara stopped walking. He was saying that basic military knowledge was part of standard human education, that they taught children how to fight before they even reached adulthood. What kind of world would produce such a culture? Marcus seemed to understand her confusion. He looked up at the alien sky and spoke in a quieter voice. Earth is not a kind world, he said. Gravity that crushes. Weather that kills. Predators everywhere. Diseases. Natural disasters. We learned to fight because everything else was trying to kill us, but that was just the beginning. He continued. We also learned to fight each other. Different tribes. Different nations. Different ideas about how to live. For thousands of years, if you wanted to survive on Earth, you had to be ready for war. Kithra felt another chill. The Zelani had fought wars, but they were rare events. Most galactic species had moved beyond large-scale conflict centuries ago. The idea of a world where warfare was constant, where children grew up learning to kill, was almost incomprehensible. She asked him about human population. How many warriors could their world produce? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and when he answered, his voice carried a weight that made her stomach clench. Earth has about 8 billion people, he said. Not all of them are soldiers, but all of them know how to fight if they have to. And we have colonies now. Other worlds. The number keeps growing, 8 billion. The entire Zelani Federation had a population of 2 billion across 12 worlds. The Vrathul Empire claimed dominion over 6 billion sentients in their territory. And here was a single species, hidden away on their homeworld in colonies with numbers that dwarfed most galactic powers. As they continued walking, Kithara began to understand why humans had remained hidden. They were not a minor species at all. They were potentially the most dangerous force in the galaxy, choosing to stay in the shadows while they observed and learned. But why reveal themselves now? Why was Marcus here, alone and injured on a dead moon? She asked him about his mission, and his answer confirmed her growing suspicions about the scope of human operations. Reconnaissance, he said simply. The Vrathul have been expanding their territory, taking worlds that do not belong to them, enslaving species that cannot defend themselves. My government wanted to know how far they planned to go. His government, as if humans had a unified planetary authority. Most species in the galaxy were still divided into competing nations or factions, but Marcus spoke as if his entire species was working together toward common goals. She pressed him for more details. How many human ships were operating in this sector? How many reconnaissance missions were currently active? Marcus gave her a look that was both apologetic and firm. I cannot tell you specifics, he said. Operational security. But I can say that you are not the first person we have helped. And you will not be the last. Humans believe in protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The implications were staggering. A hidden species with vast numbers and advanced technology, conducting secret operations throughout the galaxy. Watching, learning, and apparently deciding which conflicts deserved their intervention. Kithara looked at Marcus with new understanding. He was not just a warrior. He was a representative of a power that could potentially change the balance of the entire galaxy, and for some reason, that power had chosen to help her. As they reached the crest of a small hill, Marcus stopped and pulled out a device she had not seen before. It looked like a communication array, but far more sophisticated than anything the Zelani military possessed. He spoke into it in his own language, then listened to the response. When he finished, he turned to her with an expression she could not read. Part relief, part concern, and something that might have been anticipation. My extraction team will be here in 30 minutes, he said. They can take you anywhere you need to go. But first, there is something you should know about what is coming. What is coming? Kythera felt a mix of excitement and dread. Whatever Marcus was about to tell her, she suspected it would change everything she thought she knew about the galaxy and humanity's place in it. The sound came from above, a low thrumming that seemed to make the air itself vibrate. Kythera looked up to see something that defied her understanding of physics. The craft that descended toward them showed no visible engines, no exhaust trails, no energy signatures she could identify. It simply moved through the air as if gravity was optional. The ship was beautiful in its simplicity. Clean lines that suggested both elegance and lethal efficiency. As it settled onto the rocky ground without raising so much as a dust cloud, she realized that human technology was far more advanced than Marcus had let on. Two figures emerged from the craft. They wore armor that looked similar to Marcus's equipment, but she could see the differences now. What appeared to be simple cloth was actually sophisticated material that adapted to environmental conditions. Their weapons looked primitive until you noticed the targeting systems and power cells. Marcus spoke to his team in rapid English. She caught enough words to understand they were discussing her injuries, the tactical situation and extraction protocols. One of the newcomers approached her with what was clearly a medical scanner, disguised as a simple handheld device. The medic's examination was thorough and professional. Whatever the scanner told them seemed to satisfy their concerns about her condition. They offered her pain medication that was more effective than anything she had ever experienced. Her shoulder felt almost normal within minutes. As they prepared to leave, Kythera found herself reluctant to board the human ship. Not from fear, but from understanding. Once she left this moon, everything would change. The information she carried about human capabilities would alter the political balance of the galaxy. Marcus seemed to understand her hesitation. He sat down on a nearby rock and gestured for her to join him. When she did, he began to speak in that careful, accented galactic standard. What he told her confirmed her fears and raised new questions. Humanity has been watching the galaxy for over 200 years, he said. We learned your languages, studied your cultures, mapped your territories. We wanted to understand what we were dealing with before we introduced ourselves. 200 years of secret observation. Kythera thought about all the unexplained phenomena that had puzzled galactic intelligence services. Ships detected at the edge of sensor range that vanished when investigated. Communication signals that seemed to originate from empty space. Minor equipment malfunctions that forced military vessels to change course. You have been testing us, she said. It was not a question. Marcus nodded with what looked like approval. She was learning to read human expressions, and this one suggested he was pleased that she understood. Testing, observing, learning, he confirmed. We needed to know which species could be trusted, which ones were threats, which ones needed protection. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and humans prefer to be prepared. She asked the question that had been growing in her mind since the battle. Why reveal themselves now? Why abandon the safety of anonymity? Marcus was quiet for a moment, looking out across the barren landscape where Vrathul bodies still lay scattered. Because hiding is no longer enough, he said finally. The Vrathul are expanding too quickly. The hegemony is enslaving entire systems. The trade guilds are exploiting species that cannot defend themselves. We cannot watch anymore. It is time to act, time to act. The words carried implications that made her think of 8 billion humans learning warfare from childhood. Ships that moved without visible engines. Weapons that could defeat advanced armor through simple physics. A species that had spent 2 centuries preparing for this moment. What do you want from the rest of us? She asked. Marcus turned to look at her directly, and she saw something in his expression that reminded her why humans had chosen to help her, rather than simply observe. Partnership, he said simply. Humans believe that civilization works best when everyone has a voice. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We want to protect it. But we cannot do that alone. We need allies who share our values, allies, not subjects or clients, but equals. Kythera thought about the way Marcus had asked permission before joining her fight. The way he had treated her injuries without expecting anything in return. The way he spoke about protecting those who could not protect themselves. She stood up and looked at the human ship. Her decision was made, but she had to ask one more question. What happens to those who choose to be enemies rather than allies? Marcus followed her gaze to the scattered Vrathul bodies. When he spoke, his voice carried the same casual tone he had used during combat. The same matter-of-fact delivery that had accompanied tactical decisions. "That depends on them," he said. "Humans prefer peace, but we are very good at war. Anyone who chooses to prey on the innocent will discover exactly how good we are. The galaxy is about to become a much more dangerous place for bullies and predators." As they walked toward the ship, Kythera realized that the political landscape of the galaxy was about to change forever. Species that had dominated through force would find themselves facing an opponent they had never encountered, an opponent that had been studying them for centuries while perfecting the art of warfare. The ship's interior was as advanced as she had expected. Clean, efficient, and clearly designed by engineers who understood both form and function. She was given a seat that adjusted automatically to her physiology, another sign of how thoroughly humans had studied galactic species. As they lifted off from Xerion 7, she looked down at the battlefield where her life had changed. The broken fragments of her family's spear glinted in the alien sunlight. That weapon had been passed down through 7 generations of Zilani warriors, but it belonged to the past now. The future belonged to whoever could adapt fastest to the new reality. The Zilani had always prided themselves on their military prowess, but they would need to learn new ways of thinking, new ways of fighting, new ways of understanding what strength really meant. Marcus sat across from her as the ship accelerated toward the edge of the system. He was cleaning his weapons with the same casual efficiency he brought to everything else. When he noticed her watching, he looked up and smiled. "Where would you like us to take you?" he asked. "Back to your people? Somewhere else? The choice is yours." Kythera thought about her sister waiting for news, about the intelligence she carried concerning Vrathul movements, about the conversations that would need to happen between her government and these mysterious humans, about the alliances that would need to be forged before other species learned what she now knew. "Take me home," she said. "I have news to deliver, and I suspect my people are going to want to meet your people very soon." Marcus nodded and spoke to the pilot in English. As the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, Kythera settled back in her seat and tried to imagine the conversations that lay ahead. How do you explain to an entire government that everything they thought they knew about galactic politics was wrong? How do you tell them that humanity's friends were about to find themselves on the right side of history, while their enemies were about to discover what 8 billion warriors could accomplish when they stopped hiding? The galaxy was about to learn what humans were really capable of, and Kythera would be there to witness the beginning of a new age, one where the phrase, "Mind if I enter the fight?" would be remembered as the moment everything changed. Outside the ship's viewport, stars streaked past like bullets fired from the barrel of history itself. The future was coming, and it spoke with a human accent.